This is my first year being an elected representative here in the House of the Oireachtas, and it was my first year hearing the budget, but all that I could go in through my head when I was sitting inside listening to the budget was the song "Here We Go Again." This budget is yet another in a long list of missed opportunities by this government and its predecessors of recent years. We're over a decade into an unprecedented spell of uninterrupted growth, but we yet have chronic deficits in infrastructure, transport, health, education and energy. I've said this before in here, we are a very rich country, but for too many people we feel very poor. Where are the protections today for the vulnerable? Where are the protections for low to middle class or middle income earners in this budget? We have the second highest energy costs in Europe, skyrocketing food prices and a housing crisis that continues to spiral, with 5,000 children living in homelessness. But homelessness was never mentioned once today when they're in the addresses by both ministers today. Where was the commitment to eradicating child poverty? We have one in 5 children in Ireland are living in poverty. Our public services need urgent investments, and we've shown as a party how we would pay for them by raising revenue from restoring the bank levy to 500 million. But we're not listened to. This is another issue that we've raised today that we're not listened to in the opposition benches. This government has chosen instead to give a sweeping tax break to McDonald's and Supermacs rather than give it to ordinary people that support their needs. Delighted that other parties have picked up on this, that the VAT cuts that the VAT cuts that have been given to people like McDonald's and Supermacs would have been able to fund a second tier of child benefit. Families will get no energy supports in this budget. They'll see limited improvements in their childcare fees and will pay 500 more on college fees, which and then the government had the cheek to say to paint it as a cut. This budget is really going to hurt those who depend on their state for their income. An extra €10 a week. We know that our targeted social welfare payments are targeted. Social welfare payments are targeted, and an extra €10 a week is going to do nothing to help those families make ends meet, while the price of basic things are spiralling completely out of control. St Vincent de Paul have said we need €16 is needed to be added to every core weekly payment, and we agree with this in a party, and we have that in our alternative budget, but once again that wasn't listened to. But rather than that, tax breaks, like I said, for food barons and developers, when we could have said which could have been used to target child support payments to the poorest of families. Then on to the carers. Where's that promises that were made during the election budget, or coming up to the election? Carers save the state $20 billion a year. Both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael manifestos made a commitment towards getting rid of this, but this is only piecemeal progress. Why not get rid of it? Why not get rid of it? The Disability Federation of Ireland have already come out today and called this budget a betrayal of disabled people. Where is the cost of a disability payment that was spoken about? We have a need, we can see that the government energy credits have papered over cracks in the last budget, but this year they could have been targeted. We have the highest energy costs in Europe, but yet we have got the profiteering from the energy companies is going completely unaddressed. Labour we proposed extending the fuel allowance to all those on the working family payment and extending the payment period to 32 weeks from 28. And we would do this by putting a 20% windfall tax on the profits of the energy companies. But like 1 in 5, like I said, children are living in poverty, and a second tier of targeted child benefit are what we could have seen in this budget. Why is the derelict property tax being delayed until 2028? Why is it, we need apartments, we all agree with that, but why are there going to be a VAT cut for developers with no link to affordability on this? This wasn't even, this budget is harking back to the days of the Galway tent. It's disappointing. It doesn't do anything. It's definitely favoured the property developers, the big businesses, and it's a time that could have addressed the structural inequalities, and people now are going to spend another year living worried, in cold, and worried to spend the whole year stressed out about how they're going to pay their energy and their food bills and rent that they can't even get.
Joe Flaherty.
Thank you very much, and I want to welcome the Minister and my constituency colleague, Minister Troy, to the Chamber, and I want to commend you, Minister Troy, for your very positive input into what is a progressive budget, Budget 26. We've spoken to many of the macro points in the budget, but all politics is local, so I want to look at it on a more micro level and highlight some of the issues as they pertain and continue to pertain to Longford. Obviously, we would have preferred to see some indication as to the continuation of the N4 project in keeping with an ambitious 19 billion capital investment project. However, I welcome the announcement by the Minister that detailed specific projects to be delivered in 2026 will be announced shortly, with the sectoral investment plans for the next 5 years to be published by the various departments. I think it's important that that will feature the N4, and also we'll see an escalation of the funding process in that. I am pleased that the Minister has confirmed that his infrastructure task force will report next month and will publish a detailed action plan to tackle barriers to developing critical infrastructure. Beyond essential, it is beyond the N4, which I've also mentioned. It's also critical that we see positive and definitive timeline for the delivery of water treatment plants for the towns of Granard and Edgeworthstown. I welcome too the additional funding for the IDA, and who are in the front line of delivering critical FDI investment and jobs to the country. And I think it's critical now that they follow through on plans for an advanced factory in Longford Town. We've had notable successes with FDI employers in Longford through Abbott, Avery Dennison and Technimark, but I think a further FDI firm in the region of 200 plus jobs to start with would be critical for the future growth and development of Longford Town. Obviously, the standout disappointment for the people of Longford is failure to see a commitment for additional funding for FRCs in Budget 2026. I fought tooth and nail in the lifetime of the last Dáil to get funding for additional FRCs, or family resource centres, in the last budget, and indeed I commend the Minister Roger O'Gorman, who followed through on that commitment and did deliver the funding. 49 local areas applied for funding. TUSLA whittled it down to a short list of 15, and the Minister was able to approve funding for 5 of those, which unfortunately didn't include Longford. As a follow-on to that, I've spoken to Minister Foley. She's committed to visit Longford in the coming weeks, and I will be impressing upon her the savage inequality, socio-economic challenges that we face in Longford, and the critical need for an FRC in Longford Town. And I will be asking her to look at a mechanism that will allow the Longford Committee to reapply and hopefully get included in the next tranche of funding. Obviously, it's been a positive budget in terms of sport, certainly for the GAA, and it's great to see the government follow through on a commitment to support FAI grassroots soccer. I'm also delighted to see a commitment for a further round of the Community Sports Facility Fund, or as we used to know it, the Sports Capital Grant. It's been a huge win for regional Ireland, and it's great to see it, and hopefully it will follow through in 2026. Most significant also is an additional increase of 18 million for the large-scale sports infrastructure fund. This is timely for Longford GAA, where they're planning a major development at their Pearse Park grounds, and I attended the Glennon Brothers fundraiser in Croke Park last Friday, and I know they, as the team sponsors, and indeed the new chairman of the county board, Derek Fahy, are very enthused about this project, and I think this funding is coming at a critical time for them. Another source of worry is the absence of a commitment on the further delivery of primary healthcare centres. I know that the budget did acknowledge the recent delivery and rollout of 180 new primary care centres, but it's notable that I didn't see any commitment for additional further centres. That's a bone of concern for us in Edgeworthstown and Granard, and in Longford Town, where plans were advancing for those centres. So I would welcome some clarity on that. Also, there's no mention of a minor injury unit for Longford, or indeed any location nationally. It reminds me of 2018 when Simon Harris rolled into Longford and says that Longford would be the centre for a brain injury unit and that it would quickly follow. However, the HSE subsequently told us that it never featured in their plans at all. Just one final point, if I could make, and it relates to our constituency colleague, Minister Burke. He recently spoke at length about artificial intelligence and committed to delivering an artificial intelligence office, national office, and it's good to see 1.4 million in funding for that, as it will be a focal point for the promotion and adoption of transparent and safe AI in Ireland. As you know, Longford County Council has long been vying to develop their providers building in Longford Town. I think it's a standout building for such a facility, and I'll be hoping that Minister Burke, as it's within his grasp and ability to deliver, I'd be hoping that he could engage with Longford County Council and look to develop and deliver that project for Longford. Thank you.
Thank Very much, Cahirlach, and thank you, Minister, for coming in and giving us the opportunity to make statements on the budget. I'd like to compliment you and your Cabinet colleagues on the delivery of this budget. Just to remind people, budget 2026 is worth 9.4 billion, 8.1 billion of which is spending and 1.3 billion in tax. It represents increased spending by 7%. And I suppose through budget 2026, we're providing as much certainty as possible in a very turbulent world. This is a government that has based itself on fiscal responsibility. We're steering the economy, or we've steered the economy through successive crises, restoring the economy after the property crash, securing a good Brexit deal, protecting the economy during COVID, and supporting people through the cost of living crisis. So just in relation to that, I welcome the fact that we're helping with the cost of living, and a €2 billion package of social protection measures have been included. I welcome the €10 increase in pensioners, carers, people with disabilities and illness payments. Also, it's very welcome to see the carers allowance means test disregard has been increased substantially, and this was something that everybody who participated in the last general election would have met on the doors. The threshold for single people has gone from €375 to €1,000 per week, and for couples from €750 a week to €2,000. So that's very welcome and is looking after that particular area. Working family payment thresholds have increased by €60, and also anyone in receipt of the working family payment will also receive the fuel allowance, which is increased from by €5 to €38 per week. So all of those are welcome. In relation to housing, I particularly welcome the additional €130 million in grants for older people in the house adaptations, and I also welcome €140 million in retrofitting for social homes. And this is something I'd like to raise in a moment when I get to further education. But the €33 million additional funding to complete the National Broadband Plan is welcome. That's over 400,000 homes, farms and businesses can now connect to high-speed broadband through the National Development Plan, or the National Broadband Plan. In relation to safer communities and building stronger, safer communities, I welcome the 77 million for recruiting 1,000 additional Gardaí and 200 civilian Gardaí staff. I just hope that counties like Roscommon, and Senator Flaherty was there a moment ago, Roscommon Longford can avail of some additional Gardaí through that particular measure. I also welcome the 39 million for the phased recruitment of 150 prison staff. I would also like to see increased staff members in Castlereagh Prison with that particular measure. With regard to education, I very much welcome the additional funding for medical and nursing training places. They'll deliver an additional 1,100 additional places, which is an increase of 25%. And I note that Minister Lawless has in there an addition of 65 million to enable further 1,250 apprenticeship registrations. Something that I've raised since I came into this particular chamber was an apprenticeship centre for Roscommon, something that's been in the ether since 2018, 2019. And with the measure and the additional funding for retrofitting homes and actually for the older person retrofits, we need more people. That's the thing that's holding that sector back at the moment, the delivery in that sector back, the actual tradespeople on the ground. So I'd very much welcome the opportunity to engage on that. We in this chamber have spoken on numerous occasions and fought for the decrease in the hospitality VAT rate down to 9%. So I welcome that particular measure. And it protects 191,000 jobs in small businesses across the country from July the 1st, 2026. So we must welcome a measure like that. And just in relation to something that was said across the chamber there, this budget also represents an increase in the total spend for disability services by 618 million to 3.8 billion, an increase of 20%. And this will fund disability services for an additional 90,000 people. Also, another measure that came up numerous times in the last couple of months, and something that hasn't been mentioned here yet, But you would have all received in the last couple of days a newsletter from the Irish Postmasters Union, and they say Budget 2026 will decide the future of Ireland's post office network. So I'm sure everyone is going to stand up after me now and compliment the 15 million additional funding to support the post office network, and I'd like to commend Minister O'Donovan for putting that in place. Thank you very much.
Shandor McCormack.
Welcome, Mara. Minister, we're hearing more and more people every day talking about the cost of living. Someone actually said to me recently it should be called the cost of everything crisis because everything is going up. People needed to hear today, in respect of today's budget, workers and families who find themselves constantly struggling from week to week, needing to hear that this budget would make things more affordable. They needed to hear that rent would be made more affordable, groceries would be made more affordable, electricity, gas bills, childcare, car insurance and education all needed to be made more affordable. Today they'll hear some positive measures like an increase in minimum wage and some increases in social welfare, and those are welcome. But by the end of the week, or really by the end of the day, most people are realising that this budget has done little to nothing in terms of helping them to afford their bills and shopping and day-to-day expenses. And this is where the real failure is. I want to focus on housing first. Under successive Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael governments, housing targets have been set too low, and most targets, as low as they were, have not been met. The government's failure to adopt key recommendations by the Housing Commission report, or indeed recommendations by my own party, means that government will not meet their own targets for public or private housing next year. The tax measures announced for housing, as we've seen from previous budgets, doesn't necessarily translate into improving additional housing. There are currently 16,353 people in homelessness, which includes 5,145 children. Another record high set last month. It is desperately sad that the government budget speeches in the Dáil made no mention of those individuals or their families living in homeless accommodation today. In County Laois, I would say our biggest problem is affordable housing, and I don't necessarily mean the government's version of so-called affordable housing, because a lot of these units, what few there have been built in Laois, are still not affordable for many of the ordinary workers, and especially for younger people and families. Laois is not getting any investment in affordable housing from the LDA. An increase in affordable housing units is desperately needed. Housing is the single biggest issue for the Irish public. It can and must be fixed, and no mention of homelessness is shameful today. That can only happen if the government changes its mindsets and prioritises ordinary workers over landlords and investors. Young people will not be happy with today's budget. Most young people can't even afford to rent a property. They rely heavily now on the room to rent, not just students but also young workers. And now in room to rent situations, and the constant rise in prices is pushing their rent up too. But they don't qualify for the renter's tax credit, and they have little to no protections. A €500 reduction in student fees won't really feel like a reduction, because in terms of their fees, it's €500 higher than it was last year. What do young people of today have to do to get this government to listen to them? Sadly, I don't think that any young person planning to leave Ireland and work or live abroad will feel that anything is changing after today's budget. I don't think the government have done anything to convince them to stay, and we will continue to lose this generation of young workers to the likes of Sydney and Toronto. Germagat.
Shandor Nelson Murray.
And thanks very much, Minister, for coming in here to discuss this today. Since being elected, my first time being around for a budget, so it's great to be here. I'd like to discuss a couple of parts of the budget that I welcome, as I don't need to repeat what much of everyone else has already spoken about. Since the onset of the pandemic, we've added more than 440,000 jobs, that's just since COVID, to the economy, and we have record levels of women at work, as well as many people coming to Ireland to work. It is expected that a further 63,500 jobs will be created by the end of next year, with the economy remaining at full employment over the coming period. I am hoping that the announcements today will protect those jobs as outlined, as businesses are under so much pressure, Minister, as you know. Small businesses, who I repeatedly say welcome their employees being looked after with higher wages but need the support to do so. We see today that the VAT rate in hospitality will decrease from 13.5% to 9%, 191,000 jobs in this sector. And just to my colleague on my left, in terms of McDonald's and Supermacs, they employ so many people in Ireland, and Supermacs in fact employs 4,000 people. And Pat McDonough has been to the forefront of constantly working for businesses, especially when it comes to insurance reform, thus protecting jobs. And I'd also like to raise the point that saying we are only helping big change do even better, they only represent 0.4%, less than 0.5% of the businesses in the hospitality trade. Where I particularly welcome this reduction in VAT is in the hairdressing sector, and even more so, a sector very close to my heart, and that's the leisure sector, such as play centres, bowling alleys and indoor activity centres. These businesses were the very last to open after COVID. These businesses were not included in the increased cost of doing business grants. They have faced increases in energy, wages, rent, rates and insurance, and these businesses employ so many of our students and younger workers. So for this sector, I'm particularly happy that those centres who supply food to their customers and to all the parties that walk through the door, that they will now avail of this hospitality grant. I also welcome that the VAT rate on gas and electricity will remain at 9% until December 2030. I'd also like to acknowledge the increase in the SUSI grant threshold. I have been asking for that a lot here in the Shannon, delivered by Minister Lawless. Bringing this up to 120,000 from 115,000 is very welcome. And I know we say a reduction in fees of €500, which I do welcome. Is it better to have the reduction on fees of €500 or to face the fees going back up to 3,000? So I do welcome the reduction of €500. Additional 65 million enabling a further 12,500 apprenticeship registrations is vital. Not everybody wants to go to college, and many like to learn and earn. Funding for medicine and nursing will deliver 11,000 more places, an increase of 25%. And finally, Minister, I would like to encourage you, as Minister for Insurance, to ensure that the Insurance Compensation Fund levy that the Central Bank asked to be reduced from 2% to 1% will be passed on. I'd encourage you to ask insurance companies to pass that on to homeowners and motorists. And thanks very much.
Shandor Harman.
I think it's safe to say that this budget is giving friends in high places vibes. And what I mean by that is that it is a budget for developers. It is a budget in many ways for big businesses, for the likes of Starbucks, for the likes of McDonald's. And I think instead of saying, do you want fries with that, this budget in many ways is saying, do you want elitism with that? And I think this budget represents a reward for many of your supporters or friends in high places, just as last year's budget represents the buying of votes and many once-off measures. I suppose, first of all, I want to say in relation to the €500 increase in student fees, because it is an increase, you can't dress it up any other way, and to say it's a decrease, I think, is effectively gaslighting students and their families. And I want to ask the government, I mean, do you think people are fools by saying that that is a decrease? Because it's €500 extra coming out of people's pockets this year that wasn't there last year. And in this chamber before the summer recess, I counted 7 Fine Gael senators in a row who came out and said they were against any increase in the student contribution fee. So to hear senators from Fine Gael today saying that they welcome this, I think that is questionable, and certainly I think it is really important that this government sticks to their own programme for government, the promises that were made to the electorate when you said that you were going to decrease the student contribution fee over the lifetime of this government. So we need to see further increases to that fee, and it's important to say that we do have among the highest third-level fees in Europe. Students are already paying significantly for their education in this country. I think it was a missed opportunity not to completely abolish apprenticeship fees in terms of access to apprenticeships. It is welcome that there are more places in terms of apprenticeships as part of this budget, and that is a welcome measure. In terms of childcare, it is disappointing to see that there isn't more emphasis put on childcare. We know that this was a huge issue in terms of the election, in terms of the promises that were made. We absolutely need to move towards a public model of childcare. The 2,300 places that were announced today will be merely a drop in the ocean for families and children that are waiting for places currently. And we are a long ways away from free GP care for all children as well. So again, this needs more emphasis. In terms of dereliction, I think it's extremely worrying to see that the legislation is not expected until 2027 in terms of the derelict property levy that is being introduced. It's welcome that it will be collected by revenue, and this is certainly something that I've called for, the Labour Party has called for. But the fact that we mightn't see any of this even collected until 2028 is appalling. I mean, we have to get serious about clamping down on derelict properties. And where is the sense of urgency is what I would ask you today, Minister. In terms of renters, it is welcome that the Renters Relief Tax Credit is being continued to 2028. However, us in the Labour Party would have liked to have seen a significant increase on that to reflect the cost of living in this country. And it is absolutely shameful that there was no mention in today's budget of homeless people living in this country, that the word homeless was not uttered by any government minister in the Dáil today when we were watching the debate. And we have over 15,000 people who are homeless, over 5,000 children in this country. Are they invisible to this government? Is that what it is? Can you not see them? Can you not see what is happening in this country and how this is going to affect these children throughout their whole lives? That poverty will follow them around. 1 in 5 children, Minister, are living in poverty in this country at the minute. Where is the budget for them? And in terms of disability, disability organisations have come out being critical of this budget, saying it's a missed opportunity, saying that it will deepen poverty for these people. We have the Irish Wheelchair Association saying that many are choosing whether they can eat or whether they can turn the heating on. This is completely unacceptable. And a cost of disability payment is what the Labour Party would have put emphasis on. So it is disappointing that that hasn't been prioritised in relation to this budget. And I suppose, look, finally, I would say, if this is the kind of budget that's being delivered when we are one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and at a time when there is money in this country, then I worry what the budget would be like if that wasn't the case. Thank you.
Shandor Kine.
Look, first of all, Minister, you're very, very welcome to the Chamber. Over the last number of years, I think particularly since 2011, on and off, we've had debates in relation to VAT, and the VAT change for hospitality that took place back in the dark days of 2011 was used as a stimulus for that sector. When the then government tried to find issues that would try and stimulate the economy, would try and boost job creation, they looked to that to boost jobs, and it worked. And I certainly don't see it as being elitist to protect jobs in every town, village and region of our country. And indeed, over 99% of the businesses that will benefit from the reduction in the VAT rate are small businesses and small sector, and I think that's important. And as I said, it also supports about 190,000 jobs, and I think together with the increase in the minimum wage, which is of course an added cost to businesses. You cannot have businesses without employees, and you cannot have employees without businesses, and it is important to reflect that as well. So I certainly welcome that initiative. In relation to the research and development is so important in relation to continued investment in this country, and we know that the IDA and Enterprise Ireland do tremendous work in terms of selling Ireland, in terms of supporting businesses, start-ups, growing jobs. We've all been to jobs announcements, thankfully, across our country, and they're so important for those communities, obviously, and as a driver, obviously, of the tax take as well to the country. R&D is something that is hugely important. It's a key driver of economic growth and high-value employment, and I certainly welcome the initiatives taken by the Minister and by the Government today in relation to the rate of credit, from increasing from 30 to 35% and increasing the first year payment thresholds from 75 to 85,500 to support smaller R&D projects. In relation to some of the other changes that have taken place, certainly welcome the changes to the USC, so those that benefit from the increase in the minimum wage won't be cut in relation to the USC. Also in relation to the renter's tax credit, again been extended for a further 3 years to 31st of December 2028. Again, hugely important, as is the mortgage interest tax relief, been extended as well for a further 2 years. The VAT on gas and electricity, again, we've reduced the VAT. It was due to expire the 1st of November of this year. That has now been extended to 2030. So that is a benefit. And sometimes when you make a change 1 year, people forget that that is continuing on over the course. So that is a real cut for our consumers up and down the country, that has been extended. I welcome as well the VAT cut on new apartments, and this is about stimulating construction. It's not about rewarding anybody. It's about looking at those apartments where planning permission has been granted, and how do you encourage those developers to actually build those apartments that we need up and down the country, whether it be for private sale, for rent. We need more homes. We need to increase the supply of home. This is an initiative not to reward anyone or any sector, but to try and encourage building of apartments which are high cost in terms of building. So I welcome that. In relation to the Living City initiative, I welcome the changes made. I know there have been 5 towns included in that around the country, but also welcome the changes that have been made to that. For example, it did apply to only properties pre-1915. That's now changed to 1975 or pre-1975. So that will increase hugely the scope of eligible properties to benefit, and I think that is an important initiative. He's also extended the scheme up till the end of December 2030, and will ensure greater flexibility as well will be afforded to those claiming the relief. In relation to the derelict property tax, again, being collected by the revenue commissioners will hopefully act as an incentive, or as a stick, as it were, to force development of derelict properties. Because we see them up and down the country. There have been initiatives like the Creeconia. So this is a further, which is the carrot, but we need to ensure the stick is also used. So with that, I'd like to commend the initiatives as part of the Department of Finance today.
Shandor Brady.
Very much, Mr. Troy. You're very welcome. Today I would like to welcome the capital budget for agriculture. Minister Hayden has secured an additional 170 million in the budget 2020-2026, 158 million from last year to 170 million this year, a 9% increase, bringing the department's budget to over 2.3 billion, which includes a capital programme of 335 million. Minister Hayden got what he has worked for and listened to the local representatives and people from the farming sector. This is one of a budget of 5 that he intends to deliver, where he receives support in key areas. Most priority, of course, had to be TB. We've seen the sector, how it has risen over the last number of years and affected the livestock industry. And I'm glad to see that in this year's budget, the TB programme has gone from 85 million last year to 157 million this year in the programme. And I do think that's a sizable increase in the budget, but also it shows that the Minister and his department officials have listened to the people on the ground. It's a sector that we had to address, and I think that it will be addressed with that allocation. On improving water quality, he has secured an extension to the Acceleration Capital Allowance programme for the next 4 years, which is hugely welcome. He will also allocate 88 million to the TAMS Capital Investment Scheme for 2026, and I would welcome that. And he has secured 280 million for the Acre Scheme for 2026, an increase of 20 million on 2025. So this is an area where we have asked the farming community to buy into the Acres programme and environmental schemes, and we've seen the havoc that it caused last year, and I would welcome an increase in that this year. It was oversubscribed last year, and I welcome that the Minister has allocated more money to that scheme this year, where we need to meet our targets. The challenging sector, of course, that the Minister had this year was tillage, and he has secured at least 50 million for the tillage sector in 2026, of which he will consult with the stakeholders of the programme and design a programme for this operation. Importantly, the Minister has secured the same allocation as last year for the livestock scheme to the sum of 131 million. So I would welcome that we didn't touch the livestock sector or the sheep sector going forward. So thank you very much for your time.
Good. As there are no other senators indicating, I now call the era.
Thank you, Las Cahirlock, and indeed thank all the senators for their input into today's debate on Budget 2026. I've taken note of your contributions and hope to address the key themes that you have raised. Before we respond to individual comments, I would like to refer to some analysis in the Beyond GDP Quality of Life Assessment publication, which was published by the Department of Finance today. I'll touch briefly on 4 components: the positive performance of Ireland on wellbeing metrics by international standards, progress on equality budgeting with significant improvements in the Gender Equality Index in Ireland relative to the EU, the progressivity of the tax and social security systems, and the progressive impact of the budget package, with lower income households experiencing the highest gains. Firstly, let me touch on Ireland's wellbeing framework. It was launched in July 2021 and seeks to take a more holistic view that goes beyond traditional economic performance metrics to incorporate social and environmental considerations. The framework is based around 11 dimensions which constitute different aspects of wellbeing. Across these 11 dimensions are 35 wellbeing indicators that give a high-level overview of how the country is performing. The report highlights that progress across the 35 indicators and 11 dimensions are generally positive both over time and in comparison to other countries. In particular, Ireland continues to make progress in the income and wealth, connections and community and participation dimensions. However, we know that the persistence of inequality in society undermines our collective well-being. This government is committed to improving outcomes across Ireland, as well as ensuring that equality and wellbeing concerns are integrated into the design and implementation of government policies. From a gender perspective, analysis in Beyond GDP report shows that Ireland performs strongly relative to the EU on Gender Equality Index from the European Institute for Gender Equality. The index scores the EU and each country from 1 to 100, with a score of 100 indicating full equality between women and men. Focusing on the latest data, Ireland's score reached 73.4, rising by 8 points between 2010 and 2022. Over the period, Ireland's scores are consistently higher than the EU average. While progress has been made in this index, the government remains committed to further improving the gender disparities that remain in earnings and employment levels. In addition, the analysis highlights that some groups experience equality across a high proportion of indicators. This government is committed to providing support to the most vulnerable in society. The analysis from Beyond GDP publication also shows that Ireland has one of the most progressive tax and social security systems of any EU or OECD country, with these payments playing a key role in the redistribution of income and the reduction of poverty and income inequality. While social transfers overall makes a larger contribution to reducing income inequality, the income tax system has also become more progressive over time, ranking as one of the most progressive in the OECD. Finally, the report illustrates the progressiveness of Budget 2026. Households will experience an average gain in weekly disposable equalised income of 1.1% from the measures that we have announced. The measures are also set to benefit the lowest income households in Ireland the most, ensuring that our policies continue to move us towards a more equal society. If I can address some of the points that were raised in this evening's discussion, and the first point I'd make is this is the first budget in 5-year budgets. A number of senators coming in today saying that we're failing in our commitments in the programme for government is asking us to implement the programme for government in the first year of a 5-year government cycle. This budget is fair, it's prudent, it's progressive, and it has a number of targeted measures to help address the budget surplus that we're investing. In relation to housing, something that has come up by many speakers, and rightly so, there has been a 20% increase in this budget's allocation to housing. That's €7 billion, €5 billion in terms of capital and €2 billion in terms of current expenditure. That will deliver 10,200 new social homes. That will deliver 15,000 new affordable cost rental homes. And when people talk about homelessness, the best way to help people out of homelessness is to provide additional social homes. And we are providing the capital in this budget to provide additional social homes. We're also providing an additional €211 million in current expenditure to help people transition out of homelessness. In relation to tackling child poverty, we're increasing unemployment payment for children under 12 by €8 per week, and children over 12 by €16 per week. That's going to benefit 330,000 children. And we're introducing and extending the back to school allowance to 2- and 3-year-olds. In terms of disabilities, we're providing 1,717 additional SNAs, 860 additional special educational teachers. We're providing additional respite beds for day respite and night respite, and additional places for adults with disabilities who are over 18 and have nowhere to go when they finish their education. In terms of childcare, again, an additional €64 million under the National Childcare Scheme and an additional €52 million under the core funding scheme. I know we haven't delivered the full commitment in terms of what we can do in childcare, but it was never practical or possible, or never would be, regardless who's in government, to deliver a programme for government that sets out what we want to achieve over a 5-year period, and you expect us to deliver it in 1 year. Not practical, not fair, and I think people should acknowledge that here today. In terms of defence spending, Senator Crockwell raised it at the very beginning. In actual fact, real increase when you take out inflation, which is projected to be 2% next year, is going to be an increase of 3% in the current expenditure. And in terms of the increase in capital expenditure, something he excluded to reference, is going to be an additional 40% increase in defence expenditure. So a lot has been achieved in this budget. As I said, we're taking account of the fact that we are in uncertain times internationally. A small open economy, we're dependent on our ability to be able to trade internationally, and that's why I think one of the senators referenced really positive intervention was the expansion to their R&D credit. To ensure that the multinationals who are investing in this country continue to invest in this country, and to ensure that we continue to support the jobs that they are creating here and attract new jobs into this country. That's the most important thing, that we protect jobs. If we don't have the ability to protect our jobs now, we won't have the ability to continue to make the investments in our core services that we've begun to do in this first year of a 5-year term over the remaining 4 years. So I thank the senators for making their contributions to the House this evening, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute back.
I now ask the Leader, when is it proposed to sit again?
Tomorrow morning at 10:30.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
The House stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. Carmagad.
It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here today for this very special day for OWL graduates. Alan, Celine, Claire, Connor, Christian, Julianne and Sam. Thank you for your hard work and commitment over the last 9 months. But more importantly, thank you for all the fun and joy and the energy that you brought to Leinster House every day. We continuously strive to make Leinster House more inclusive. So thank you to all of you for keeping us on our toes and showing us how we can improve and do better. Today, you are not just here as graduates, you are here as friends and colleagues. And today marks the end of your traineeship, but it is only the beginning of your career paths. And we look forward to being part of it and to hearing all about it in the future.
Can I say to you that, people say, well, it's good they're doing this. And isn't it great that our graduates are coming out every year and they're getting part-time employment and some of them are going on to further education. And good God, that is great. Because you know what that represents? It represents this place where an awful lot of talk goes on and an awful lot of policy is made. But it involves this place actually doing the work first and being an example for public service and private sector organisations. And you know what? You may have benefited, and I hope to God you've enjoyed your period here. But you know what? The people here who worked with you, they've benefited enormously too, because you have taught them a lot about the challenges that you face, the challenges that they could have faced in their lives, and many, many other things that are of enormous importance to people in life. And I thank you as parents and guardians and brothers and sisters of the graduates for encouraging and supporting them to participate. And I believe that in making their lives better and more fulfilled, they've helped their families to be more confident and more optimistic about the future and what it holds for your sons and daughters.
Our graduates this year completed 2 QQI Level 3 awards. So they have completed a certificate in word processing and a certificate in communications. And these certificates will support you in whatever careers you choose to pursue.
As the Ceann Comhairle says, it's the first parliament in the world that does anything like this. And as the last few years have shown, it's starting to mushroom and people are getting to see what's going on in relation to it, so it's been absolutely really valuable. I don't know if people realise that we're in the presence of a TV star here today. And I mean a real TV star from Bad Sisters. Connor is here with us today. And just to wish, we might have a new partnership starting now, because Connor has secured a place in Trinity College, and he will be starting in September, so we wish him all the very best for that.
We are forever indebted to the Ceann Comhairle, and I say it every year, but it was the vision, the leadership in championing this important groundbreaking initiative, which plays a crucial role in promoting equality, diversity and inclusiveness in the workplace. Today is a bittersweet moment for me as I say a fond farewell, having embarked on a new chapter in my career. I'm filled with a deep sense of gratitude as I've been privileged in witnessing the power of dedication, empathy and inclusivity in action in Leinster House. And in their unwavering commitment to supporting individuals with intellectual disability in their quest for employment, I think is nothing short of inspirational, and I want to thank everyone in the Houses of the Oireachtas for their commitment. To all the OWL graduates, the most important VIPs in the room, congratulations on your amazing achievements. I look forward to hearing about your careers, how they progress into the future and where you all end up. May you continue to achieve great things, and may you continue to support one another, which is, I think, the foundation of this programme, is everyone as a unit becomes so strong. Remember, it's people who make a place special, and you and the OWL graduates that have gone before you has made this place extraordinary. Go raibh maith agat.
Donohoe and Senator Laura Harran. The purpose of today's meeting is about inclusive education for persons with disabilities. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the three of you and to thank you for all the work you do. So if we could get your, just a note on privilege and the housekeeping matters. All witnesses are reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice that you should not criticise or make charges against any person or entity by name or in such a way as to make him, her or it identifiable, or otherwise engage in speech that might be regarded as damaging to the good name of the person or entity. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to an identifiable person or entity, you will be directed to discontinue your remarks. It is imperative that you comply with any such direction. The evidence of witnesses physically present or who give evidence from within the parliamentary precincts is protected pursuant to both the Constitution and statute by absolute privilege. I would like to remind members of the constitutional requirements that in order to participate in public meetings, members must be physically present within the confines of the Leinster House complex. Members of the committee attending remotely must do so from within the precincts of Leinster House. Can I now call on Dr. Aideen Hartney to make your opening statement?
Thank you, Chair. The National Disability Authority welcomes this opportunity to appear before this committee on the topic of inclusive education. The NDA is a statutory agency established to provide evidence-informed advice and guidance to the Government on disability policy and practice, and to promote awareness and application of universal design. This statement is organised according to the topics of interest identified by this committee. Article 24 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities confers a right to education for persons with disabilities and requires state parties to have an inclusive education system that supports the full development of human potential and sense of dignity and self-worth. In our recent written submission to this committee on the theme, we highlighted that despite the fact that the Irish policy and legal position is that all children can attend and receive support to be educated in the mainstream, the Irish statutory education system is likely to be considered a dual system by the UN Monitoring Committee on the Convention. This is due to the rise in numbers of special classes and special schools as a response to the perceived educational needs of learners with disabilities. The UN Committee believes that inclusive education involves learners with disabilities undergoing their education in the same environment as mainstream students, enabled by the built environment, teacher competence, assistive technologies and other supports as relevant. In previous concluding remarks from the UN Monitoring Committee, states parties have been criticised for segregated provision of education, particularly where the committee sees the scale of this segregation as persistent or increasing over time. The Irish Government has recognised the disconnect between current practice and the goals of the UN Convention, as is evident in the commitment in the newly published National Human Rights Strategy for Disabled People to developing a roadmap towards inclusive education. The NDA advises that this important work will take time to achieve, as it will involve close engagement and consultation with learners with disabilities, disabled persons organisations, parents and families, educators and experts in the field. We are aware of examples of good practice from other jurisdictions, including Portugal, Italy and Canada, that can offer learning for the Irish system. It should be noted, however, that even in these jurisdictions, challenges remain in managing the allocation of resources and building awareness and understanding of true inclusion. The principles of universal design offer a route to designing and to delivering an education system that can meet the needs of all, regardless of ability or disability. The NDA's Statutory Centre for Excellence in Universal Design has developed an advice paper on universal design in education that sets out a whole systems approach to inclusive education based on 4 pillars: learning, teaching, curricula and assessment, support services and social engagement, the physical environment and the digital environment. Assistive technology is recognised as an important enabler in an education setting. Approximately a quarter of students in secondary schools report needing some support or accommodation to enable them complete their second-level education journey, which can include access to technologies or additional personal supports. Challenges remain, however, in the level of awareness among teaching staff about what technologies are available, or in having the training needed to keep up with the pace of technological advancement. Where AT is provided, the management and ownership of this system can cause further barriers to smooth transitions between schools or educational stages. As AT is often a requirement across the life course, it is important that the state develops an approach to its allocation that recognises this and is appropriately person-centred. Delivery of universal design in education also involves ensuring that transition points in the education journey are as seamless as possible for students. In our work, we have frequently advised on the importance of managing transitions between second-level education and employment or further education and training opportunities. This is a point at which students can often fall between stools and be routed into specialist services where their potential is not fully realised. The same risks exist at the start of the education journey as well. The access and inclusion model of support in early childcare settings has seen some welcome results in developing fully inclusive settings where children receive tailored supports according to their level of need. More work is needed, however, to manage the transition between these settings and primary education. In particular, work is needed to communicate clearly to parents, families and educators what the next stage in the journey looks like and what supports will be in place for the learners in question. We understand the anxiety on the part of parents to have their children educated in an environment where the necessary supports are in place. Due to a combination of lack of awareness of what is currently in place in mainstream education and a recognition that the quantum of support provision is not always as it should be, some parents can believe that specialist education provision is the only way of ensuring their child's needs can be adequately met. The NDA advises that the response to this cannot be a constant increase in segregated education settings, but rather a dual approach to building capacity and resources in the mainstream, joined with close engagement with families to build trust in this system. The NDA has recently completed a rapid evaluation of the pilot enhanced in-school therapy model and submitted a report to the HSE and the Department of Children, Disability and Equality. The learnings are being used